personal life side.
Yes.
Now, as we all have, I've got a lot of experience with people around us where you've got one person in a partnership or two working themselves to death for whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And quite often the relationship breaks down, and so how did that affect you guys? So how long have you been with your partner for?
Well, we've known each other since I was 16, which I can't work out the maths now after such a long day.
You have to
but
tell
a long
me how
time.
old you are.
42, so any mathematician there. This is where my accountant goes, that's why I'm here.
26
yeah,
years.
Is it? Thank you very much. Like, straight on it. If this was a morning meeting, I would have nailed that. But by this time of the night, I don't even know my own name. 26 years. But
we're giving it away now that we're filming at night.
Yeah, that's true.
Nice to meet you all.
And if my wife's watching, I've now got to try and remember how many years we've been married. So I'm going to go 10.
Right, okay.
Which will be close.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm I've got it there or thereabouts. But it's a cliche, isn't it? Everybody says it, but you have got to have that supportive, partner. And even though my wife's a teacher, a primary school teacher.
And my fiance's
really?
primary school teacher. Yeah,
great.
Yeah,
yeah.
so
I'm
about to go through all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I'm going to go and start B&B as well. I'm doing next door to the beach.
Yeah, perfect. I can talk you out of it now. But yeah, she was very, very supportive, but also deliberately didn't come and work in the business. There's been lots of times that I've sort of thought, you know what?
She was washing
work
glasses on you.
Yeah, exactly. But never got involved in the sort of management side. And although she's a sounding board and I talked to her about it and stuff like that, she's deliberately, even though I've probably asked and said, look, actually, I could really do with a hand. You could come in. There's lots of stuff in the business you could do. For the good of the relationship, it's probably not a good idea to do that. And the other thing I think where I'd worked, I was lucky to have a career before I set up the B&B. So a lot of people either come into a B&B as a retirement project and think, well, that'd be a nice lifestyle, and they're in their 60s and work out it's not. Or maybe it's the first thing they do. I'd run businesses with 100 staff and multi-million-pound turnover, and I knew that you can't do everything yourself. So actually the letting go bit was something that I always knew I either had to keep the business at a size where I could run it and it was manageable, or I needed to grow it to the point that I could employ people to help me out. So although the first 2 or 3 years were insane, after that I did start to employ people, and I suppose I never wanted to have to work 100 hours a week in my business. I always wanted to get it to the point where I could employ support. But I was lucky enough to know a bit more about how to do that and how to manage people and how to recruit from my previous life. So yeah, it was bonkers, and it was the wrong side of balance. And I forget my wife always says, "Oh, I nearly left you at this point and that point and stuff," and tells me the stories. And I'm really, was it that bad? But I was so driven and so focused, and not that I was a bad guy, but I was just, I was very, 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 very focused on work.
What's that commitment you
soaks
have
up all the time. Yeah, it
becomes,
it's all you think about. It's literally it's not a work-life balance. It's a blend. There's no difference really between being at work and not being at work. It's just always going on, and that's still the same in the fact that it's always there. I don't really, switch off my phone. We can come to that. In some ways, it's less stressful to be in control. But yeah, it's a challenge. And then at some point in the business, you actually go, right, you know what? Now I need to actually plan. And the thing is, if you're the MD, you can always do more. You never run out of jobs. There's always more hours you can work. So the business would run more efficiently if I was in there. It's just quite challenging my parents, who have been self-employed and would do a lot of the jobs themselves. And it used to really frustrate them that I would give quite a long leash. And I wouldn't always be there for every service or running the bar. But I'd have to go, look, if I don't give these people the opportunity to make the mistakes and to learn and give a fairly long leash, probably also the fact that I owed them the money for that house was a motivator. Get in there and work and graft and give it back. But yeah, I would... you grow your business a little bit slower, because you can go into a business, I think, and demand results from people, and you will get instantaneous results, but it's very short term. Whereas if you go into a business and expect results and train people over time and give them a leash, then it's very different. I always say that I expect a lot and demand very little. I don't mind. If nobody wants to work for me, it would be a problem. But if people don't want to work for me, that's all good. It's no problem. It's like, if you want to work with me, great. Work hard, graft, be good. Be a decent person, have some integrity, let's do it together, it's wonderful. And if you don't want to do that, that's cool as well. I'm not going to make you do it. I'm not going to come in and tell you what to do. It's like, you want to do it, here's where we're going, this is what we do, join in the journey, and let's have some fun. And if you don't want to do it, it's all good, but would you mind going and working for someone else? So
how many people do you have working for you now?
About 120, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, loads.
So you said you've got land out in the forest?
Yeah, that's just my father-in-law, to be fair. So he lives out there in a caravan and grows produce, lives on the land. He's always been fairly nomadic, so it's about the most base he's had. But it's not about being self-sufficient, it's about growing interesting stuff. So from Globar to Chokes to, I don't know, there's no point growing carrots and potatoes because they're cheap. But if you are going to grow them, grow some sort of, some old heritage kind of seeds and try out the sort of some of the stuff that you don't really get anymore. Or if you've got courgettes, it's about growing the flowers more than the courgettes themselves because they're quite hard to keep fresh. And the fact you can get, we can go out there and harvest some food and have it in the restaurant within 60 minutes is a bit of a buzz. And the motivation for doing that is it takes 1,000 days to grow asparagus. And when I learnt that, and asparagus is only in season for about 10 or 12 weeks locally. And most of the asparagus you get in this country is flown in from Peru. But I was like, how do I get people? When you go into the restaurant and you say, what's on the specials tonight? I don't want the waiter or waitress just to say soup or this or that. I want them to say, you know what? We're bang in the middle of the asparagus season. It's 3 years, 1,000 days to grow asparagus, and you can only have it for the next 4 weeks, and it's bloody amazing. And how do I get them to be buzzing about asparagus? I thought I'll make them plant it and sit there for 3 years and wait for it to grow. So that was the motivation for getting the farm. Nobody has as yet sat there. In fact, the asparagus, not only does it take 3 years, but when we grew it, it was rubbish. So so it takes more than that.
So not all plans work then?
No, it was a crap idea. But it's interesting.
When you talk about it now, it sounds like quite a good marketing stunt.
I mean, it's one of those things. It makes no financial sense, but I go out there with my kids, and they drive around in this little tractor thing, and they learn about food and drink, and we've taken some school groups out there, and that's what it's all about. When you take kids out there, particularly sort of kids from some schools in Boscombe that are quite deprived and probably don't really understand where food comes from and don't necessarily have the best diets, and you go out there and you pick it from the ground and you cook it out on the land and stuff like that and get them trying it, and these kids who might sometimes be a bit problematic were nothing but a delight and infused and stuff, and you're like, that's back to that thing about time, isn't it, and humanity, and the reason we do it. Dig up some food, cook it in a field, sit down and have a chat and eat it. Brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, no. I think your vision's is quite infectious.
Thanks.
It's quite
Good.
infectious. So I've always thought it's been quite important for people to have hobbies, pastimes that actually draw them away from work, especially if they're working all hours, God sends. So do you have any hobbies that you...
The challenge with our industry is that when everybody else is relaxing, and what they do to relax is my job. So when you go out for dinner with friends, or nobody invites me around for dinner anymore because you're sort of always like, where'd you get that, and the food and the recipes, but particularly when you go out to bars and restaurants.
Do you tell people you don't like their food as well?
Not at all.
My restaurant does better
and I'm genuinely grateful if anybody makes any kind of food. But yeah, when we go to London or we go away with friends, and you just can't help, what other people's leisure time is my trade. Now I love it, but I can't help but sit there and see the service and see the kitchen and see what's going on, and either want to almost, you see a lot of places where you think, oh man, I could really help with this, or actually more often than not, I'm super sympathetic to people who are running hospitality businesses, because I recognise, people are funny. They'll come to your restaurant 10 times. I come 10 times, I've been every month, and it was perfect. Every time I loved it. It was really good food, and I came last night and it was rubbish, and I'm never coming back. And you're like, but surely, we didn't all of a sudden wake up and decide to be rubbish. Did somebody call in sick, or has it been really rough out at sea? It's the people who lay into you because you've run out of fish on a Monday. So the fishermen don't go out generally on a Sunday. So if it's been really rough, maybe Saturday, Sunday, and you can't get a fresh delivery on a Monday if you use local produce, and people lay into you and go, oh my God, you've run out of fish, you're a disgrace to your industry. But that is a separate topic. I ride my bike, is the answer to the question. Before I got to that, because where's he going now? I'm now fishing, and we've got no fish, and it's because the ocean, and that's not my fault. And I don't come into your office and say you've run out of staplers, and it means you don't give a toss about your industry or your job because you've got no staplers in your cupboard, and go on bloody Staple Advisor, do I, and slate you. But that's another story. But yeah, luckily a few years ago, got back into riding my bike. Okay. And now I do, so what a weird thing. I think again, it's this probably drive of the entrepreneur, because cycling is the new golf. And it's become a networking kind of thing, and you have a lot of conversations. But I go out to maybe the Alps or the Pyrenees and climb some big mountains on a bike.
So you do proper cycling?
I mainly just cycle around the New Forest and the Purbets, right. But I have now done mountains that I didn't even know existed, rides that I didn't know, the Marmont over in France, and 4 mountains in a day, and it ends on the top of Alpe d'Huez, like some of the Tour de France stuff. And when you get into that zone where you're just climbing in your bottom gear for 2, maybe 3 hours up a mountain, and you're just in pain, and you're sweating, and you cannot think about anything else apart from breathing and pain and staying alive, you can no longer think about work. And it's almost that meditative kind of state that you get into.
That sounds intolerable.
I can't explain it, and it's weird. And you meet other cyclists and you go, why do we like this? It's hell on earth. And but you get to the top of that mountain, and I guess it's like, it's kind of like skiing, but a lot more pain. But you're outside, you've got amazing views, you've got the challenge and the chat, and then maybe you stop and you have a beer at the top and a bit of food. But there's many elements to it I like. But really, you just get absolutely beasted to the point where, you can't think about the stress of day-to-day stuff. And that's the extreme of it. But even, within 20 minutes, I can be out in the New Forest on an evening, riding my bike, and the sun's setting and the trees and all that kind of stuff, and it's beautiful. But that's
well, that's I appreciate, because I go driving up there, and I
stunning.
just put the headphones on, and drive around. I absolutely love. We're very, very fortunate to have such an unusual place to live. I don't think people realise how bizarre this area is.
It's amazing.
New Forest is 15, 20 minutes up the road, and we've got some of the most beautiful beaches in Europe, and still quite a small town as well.
And the Purbeck's the other way, the extremes of the landscape out in the Purbeck's. It's like, if you don't wake up every day and be super excited and grateful when you live somewhere like this, then I don't know.
You're not going to find anything better.
Don't talk to me. Then maybe go and run the Russell Coast. I don't know. Damn, I'm so going to be in trouble.
I knew that was going to come back.
I'll be thrown out the next council meeting I'm in.
You might not be invited
I
in
may
the
not
first
be
place.
that'll free up some time, and I'll ride my bike, walk my dog. I kept trying to say no to more things, so I could ride my bike and walk my dog, but everything's too bloody interesting, so I end up saying, okay, I'll do that.
Well, I mean, that's the inquisitive mind, isn't it?
It is
the opportunity to try new things.
Everything's fascinating.
One of the things that I've had conversations with people over the years, and when I've got into something like, I got into kit cars years ago. Yeah. And I was 21. And a friend of mine said, well, how did you get into this? And I said, well, I tried it. It was my 21st birthday, and I got a bit of money from my family, and I had some money saved up. And this is still only a hobby, it's not my job. But I went out, and I was thinking, I'm going to treat myself to a car. I was at university at the time, I couldn't afford much. And my friend said to me, he said, what are you going to buy? And all my friends had BMWs and Golfs and things like that. And I was like, well, I can't really afford anything particularly decent. And I found a kit car which had no roof, nice. No doors on it, but it was this odd little thing that had, just a windscreen, and you just jumped in and threw the harnesses on and drove around, and you had to put it over a cover over it every time you parked it back at my student digs. And I just said, that's the thing I want to drive every day. And my friends thought I was bonkers. And actually, by trying that, I didn't know how to work on cars. I barely knew where to put the oil in. Yeah. And I just thought, I'm going to give this a go. And then I had to learn how to maintain an engine. And then I had to learn how to take a carburettor apart and all the other stuff that went with it. And then years down the line, when people ask me the story and say, well, how did you get into that in the first place? And I go, well, I just kind of tried it. And I just thought, I thought it's something no one else is doing. I quite like the fact that very few other people are doing it. Yeah. And much like yourself going into doing the B&B, I can't imagine you had one friend around you who had done that. No. Not one person.
Still don't. Yeah. Don't have any friends anymore, let alone friends.
Don't have time for
friends who've done anything. But yeah, I think that, that's the thing, it's just start, isn't it? Just start. You got your kit car and then you learn how to do it. It's inevitable. And I think there's this paralysis of debate or overthinking sometimes. And yes, you need to think and plan a bit, but really, once you start, you're on a journey, aren't you? It's all about that first step. Just make a start, whatever it is you want to learn about. And there's no excuse anymore. I think people use excuses too much. My business didn't work because of this, or I don't understand social media, or I don't understand marketing, or whatever. But the information is everywhere now, and it's free, isn't it? It's like you used to have to go to university, or maybe you used to have to be.
No offence to the universities out
there. You don't have to go anymore. If you want to go, great. You get some great cheap beer, and you learn some stuff, and you meet some people. So
lots of guys and girls, lots of house parties.
Yeah, but if you're really driven and self-motivated, what you actually learn, maybe the debating and stuff like that. But the speed you can now learn any topic you want is phenomenal, isn't it? Because information is free and it's everywhere and it's on the internet. So there's no excuse not to learn the stuff that you need to use anymore. Just invest your time more wisely. Basically.
I think a big barrier which has changed in the digital era is people asking for help. I think it was more commonly, and I may be out of line saying this, but I think girls always communicated far better with each other and asked for help than boys did inherently. I don't know if that sounds like a sexy thing
only in
to
the
say.
Well, no, I don't know, and if it is, then it's your fault. But, but as long as it's not, I have a son and daughter. My daughter's 8, my little boy's 10, and they do some learning thing. And always the feedback that we get is that my son never puts his hand up, never asks for questions, and my daughter does. And that's the constant feedback that he gets, is that he needs to put his hand up and ask more. So I don't know if it's sexist or not, but it's also true. So.
Well, and I suppose the one thing that sort of supports that is that the phrase alpha male existed first, and the alpha we talked about earlier is the idea of people not wanting to ask for help and going, "No, I can do this, I've got this," and then it all goes horribly wrong. And I know there will be a lot of people out there who, being honest with themselves, will probably say, there have been plenty of times in my life where I could have just asked for help, and it's that pride thing you mentioned earlier of letting that go and just going, you know what, I need to get somebody in here who's actually going to sort of just help me, a friend, absolutely. A family member, a colleague, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, this is what you do. But I did some work with Dorman, and that having somebody to use as a sounding board and to speak with and chew the fat on and get some perspective, that's probably the most useful thing you can get, and that's probably what you do get, at university that you don't learn online, is the conversation that happens after it and the conversation around it and the digging deeper into subjects and all that kind of stuff.
There's interpersonal skills as well. It's so important to sit in front of somebody as opposed to watch a video, chat to people online. And much like going back to your restaurants, creating that. It's a good environment for people to build their interpersonal skills.
Yeah, I'm a governor at my kids' school, but what you really want to see us learning, and particularly with artificial intelligence and robots and everything being built in other countries, is the key thing that human beings need to be taught is that look people in the eye, smile, how you come across. That's what you need, and your ability to go off and find out the answers to subjects and stuff. Just teach people to be great humans is enough. I don't think the remembering stuff and the education system with the put up your hand and sit in lines and all that kind of stuff. It's not relevant anymore. So I don't know how we make that leap in education to the sort of people that we need for the future. But I can't help but feel that some of it's great, and the joining the dots and the neurons and whatever's going on in your brain is fine. But this kind of feels a little bit like brainwashing sometimes, and we need to create human beings who are more questioning and interesting, and the presentation skills and just being human really. And I think we beat that out of people too much. It's this this expectation, and you failed and you can't do that and all that. That's the point, isn't it? Fail.
But this quickly. Is the other thing, and the mentality. Certainly, when I was young, growing up, I was obviously born at the beginning of the '80s. There was still very much that mindset of you go to school, you work hard, and then you go on to further education, or you go and get an apprenticeship, and eventually you go and get a good job somewhere. And there was always this idea of getting a good job. And now the mentality is, you're saying, not saying don't go to university, but there are alternatives.
You don't have to.
And you don't have to work for somebody else anymore.
No.
Create your own,
Yeah, and once upon a time I actually thought everybody should be self-employed. Why would you want to work for anyone else? You should be self-employed, everyone should be self-employed. Now actually, 12 years into the journey or whatever it is, there's a lot of reasons not to be self-employed. I actually get now people who would rather just be employed. So I think we always, it's almost gone too far the other way. Don't work for anyone else, go and get a job. Firstly, we all need people to work for us as well. But actually, there are some benefits to that. From a, it's not for everybody. That constant mental drain, the fact that you're never off, the fact that a holiday's never the holiday, the fact that you don't walk out the door at 5 o'clock and go, I'm not going to think about that anymore. There's lots of downsides to being self-employed. I happen to love it. I happen to be very good at managing, the stress levels. Very good at managing being sort of, £2 million in debt. Some people wouldn't be able to sleep if they owed that much money to the bank, whereas I'm like, well, it's all right, isn't it? Well, they say if you owe the bank 10 grand, you've got a problem, and if you owe the bank £1 million, they've got a problem. Don't let my bank manager see this, because he'll start to sweat. But it's not for everyone, and that's fine as well. So we're all different. There's no right or wrong. It's go on the journey and go on the adventure that you want to go on. But we're phenomenally privileged nowadays that you can find a podcast or a video or a learning group for probably any nigh on any subject on planet Earth, and that's amazing. That's amazing. It's no longer about wealth. You don't have to buy that information anymore. That should be phenomenally exciting to everybody to go. I can now do whatever I want on planet Earth, and that I didn't used to be able to do that because I was in the wrong class or the wrong colour or the wrong ethnics. It's all gone. It's all gone. Really. I mean, it's probably oversimplifying it a little bit. But
no, but I think we are, as a race, moving in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
And probably at a faster speed than we've ever done before as well. What advice would you give to somebody who, on their own, sitting in their bedroom at the moment, is going, I want to try this idea.
Yeah.
But I may have to give up my job to try it. I may have to,
But if they're 22, I tell them not to worry about it. I go and have some fun. It's like literally, I don't know.
You can recover at that age.
Yeah, and we're all driven to kind of do more, get more, go fast, or whatever. First thing is go off. I thought the world was a certain way, but I wanted to go and check, so I travelled. Just do anything. So first, don't worry about what you're going to do. It's this what you're going to do when you're a grown up. I don't know what I'll do when I'm a grown up.
No, neither do I, man.
But genuinely, don't worry about it. It's that first step. It's just go and do stuff. I have conversations with my team sometimes who, they all want the end game. They want to own the business, or they want the big glass tower, and they want the suit and the car and all that kind of stuff. But don't want to put the graft in to get there. But as long as you're learning every single day, then it's that old cliche again of you can't join the dots until you look back. So all the stuff that you're doing now, when you look back, you'll be able to go, okay, I see I did that, and that led to that, and that led to that, and it's an adventure. So the biggest thing is just be motivated to do something. I think there's this paralysis sometimes of trying to come up with an idea, and you could be sitting in your room going, I need an idea, and I want to be an entrepreneur, and I want to be self-employed. But you don't know what the idea is. So in the first instance, just get out and live. Get out on the road, do some jobs. Practice with other people's money. Practice learning how to manage people. Practice relationships. Never think that you're in a dead-end job and you're not learning anything. If you don't like your job, you're probably learning what you don't like. And if you love your job, great, you're learning what you like. So don't. I feel sorry for all the people going, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be. First of all, just go and be and do everything. Say yes to everything. Say yes to everything for a year and see where it takes you, because it will be fascinating. And then once don't do it for money. Very few entrepreneurs you meet say, why do you do it? I do it for the money. They don't. They do it for the love, or because it's exciting, or because they want to create something that doesn't exist. You don't go, I'm going to do this because I'm going to make money, because it probably won't work. How hard you're going to have to work and how many hours you're going to put in. Yes, the money should come, and yes, if you work hard enough and you're good enough and enough people love what you do, ultimately you want to be financially rewarded for it. But very seldomly do you hear the success stories where they say, I did this because I thought it would make me a load of money. It's normally something that gets them excited to get out of bed every day and think about it on Christmas Day, when they're with their friends and when they're out with their girlfriends, that it's still ticking away in their heads. So that's the key. But the annoying thing with that is you're sitting there going, oh yeah, I want to be self-employed, but I don't know what that idea is. Don't worry about that either. Go to the beach, ride your bike, go for a surf, I don't know. But it will come, eventually it will come. Don't rush it. But once you've got that idea, then don't be lazy. Don't use the excuse of time or money or blame somebody else. If you want to do it, the information's there. Just care and go 120%. I worked at Tesco's when I was a kid, when I was at university, and I was never late. I was never sick. I always cared. I always went in and grafted. I knew I didn't want to work at Tesco for my whole life, but I was just like,
committed.
Yeah, just do it. Like, what's the point? You might as well aim at a 10. You might as well aim at a 10. What's the point of being rubbish? Whatever you're doing, aim at a 10. It's rarely is it more effort to wake up every day and go, I'm going to go for a 10 or I'm going to go for a 4. Wake up and go, I'm going to be happy and excited, I'm going to be miserable. It's the same amount of effort to be miserable. It's often worse to be miserable than it is to be happy.
And some people
just
make
happy.
it look so easy, though.
They do, yeah. But I think
it's so many miserable people out there. And what are you doing with your life?
It's a victim mentality. I don't know, it's headspace, isn't it? Go for a walk your dog. I don't know, go for a swim. Don't worry too much. And it's like that when you try and overthink stuff and you can't remember the answer. And the time that you have your best ideas is when you create a little bit of headspace. It's another long answer, isn't it? And it's not specific, but don't put too much stress and pressure on yourself. And if you're 22, go to some travel agent and disappear around the world for a few years and forget about grafting. You've got long enough to graft and have a
life is long. People say life is short. It is long, and there's a lot of time to get a lot done.
It goes quicker and quicker the older you get, isn't it? But those first few years are all about, just learning about planet Earth, I think.
Yeah. So okay. So I one last question, and then we'll wrap it up, because as you said, the editor's going to be killing us because so much content.
So many of my staff, after an appraisal, end up bugging off and going travelling. my ops manager kills me. He's like, you've talked another 5 people out of working and grafting. Well, they were a bit lost. I told them to go and find themselves and travel the world. He's like, but we need them to work on Saturday. Now they're in New Zealand. Sorry.
And they're having a great life.
Yeah, but they come back.
So last question. Can you give us any idea what you're going to do moving forward? Do you have any? Have you got any plans you can talk about, or anything that you really want to achieve?
I think we've got the business itself. The business is really it's still challenging because we're still massively seasonal. We make money in the summer, we lose money in the winter. So I'd really need to try and get the business on an even keel where it can, try and smooth out those peaks and troughs a little bit would be really nice. I'm very lucky now that we've got amazing ops managers work with me for the last sort of 7 years, marketing manager, financial controller. I've got some grown-ups around me now. So whereas I was marketing, I was finance, I was
they must despair of you.
The housekeeper, yeah. I think they despair if I sort of disappear for a few days. I've had some ideas, and we've just recovered from the last set of ideas. But no, they're really, really good bunch of people, and that's making running the business much more fun. So whereas at points it was just hard graft, now it's fun. So I think there's a lot of stuff we'd still like to do in hospitality. Again, it's unlikely that we'll just come up with one idea and roll it. I think there's some opportunities with the wood oven where we do wood-fired pizzas. I'd really like to try and educate more people that some of the big multi-chain pizza places that they don't even have a proper oven. They put them on a conveyor belt and they go through this funny little grill thing and come out the other side.
I was a pizza delivery boy when I was 17, so I remember all that.
Stop buying that rubbish. It's so annoying. So I think if we might open a few more of those, because if we could deliver to the whole conurbation, it probably makes more sense, because a lot of our marketing and stuff at the minute is wasted, because if you're not within a few miles of us, then we can't deliver to you. So there's some stuff in hospitality that the business will do. We've had ideas around having more of a production kind of warehousey space where we roast our own coffee and brew our own beer and bake our own breads, which we already have our own bakers that come in, but a new space for that. But also there's this sort of personal desire to do some interesting stuff. So I've got some ideas around around some podcasts in hospitality that I'd like to do. A bit more sort of public speaking and presenting, working a bit more with with the entrepreneurs of the future and stuff like that. Just because, I don't know, in general, if I'm very lucky that if I go and talk and I present at some schools and stuff like that, generally people seem to get quite excited and quite buzzy and go, thanks for the energy and the feedback. So maybe there's a gift that I've got that isn't just about working my nuts off in a restaurant at a bar, but I can go off and do some inspiring stuff. Yeah, which is that whole itch of, what's your point of being on planet Earth? What's your thing? So I love what I do, but I think if the business is getting to a point where I've got a team of people that can help run it, my role now is future strategy, what's next, but also, what's the complementary stuff that I can do around the business? Even just having conversations like this, hopefully inspires a few other people to do some bits.
I hope so.
And that's nice. And what a privileged position it is, to be asked to come and talk some nonsense to people. So thank you.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Mark. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Really enjoyed having you along today. I've got so many more questions for you, but maybe
we'll do it again.
We'll do it again another time. And best of luck with the business. And looking forward to catching up again soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam.